Hey guys, Syntax here. Hope everyone is doing well. Last night I made this synthwave or vaporwave Mac 11. I was just in the mood and sent it to a few discords when I was done, and I got asked for a tutorial, so here it is. First I had to get in the vaporwave mood, so I put on some music. I started in Cinema 4D with importing my Mac 11 file. It's not actually mine, it's a royalty-free one from online, so I'll include it in the description. Once it is imported, you find a good position in the camera for it. You can move the camera around using 1, 2, and 3, or little buttons in the top right corner of the viewport. I'll be speeding up clips as I go because sometimes it takes a while just figuring out what looks good. And then when we're done, we want to go to the render settings, go to effect, and then go down to sketch and tune. Turn on edges, and you want to make the default hidden the sketch material. Turn off the background, turn off object and shading. This stuff right here is what will give it the cell rendered look. This thickness setting is what controls the thickness of the lines. It's pretty much preference for what number you want it to be. You'll see me mess around with it a few times as we go through. We throw the sketch and tune onto the object. We're going to edit the default material, turn off the reflectance. We're going to turn on alpha. We're going to add under effects a proximal texture. Go into the texture, and you're going to want to add the object into the objects. You want to turn on use edges and change the end distance between 0.5% and 1%. You'll notice the gun disappear and it's making it see-through besides the edges. I'm gonna speed up this bit here. I'm messing around with the settings. Go to the sketch and tune material and you can change the color. You make the outlines white so that way later in post you can really make them any color. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually edit the geometry of the object to make it look cleaner when it's all outlined. You'll see I completely removed this whole back thing just because I like the cleaner look with it. To do this, you can select the face mode. You'll see on the left side, and then you can use the select tool and you can go around deleting stuff. I'm just going over selecting, deleting, and then you'll also notice I just delete straight up faces from the whole gun, and when it's not in the sketch and tune render, it will look weird, like it's missing faces, because it is, but that's because I think if we're only rendering it with the edges, then I don't want to have the geometry or the lines going through diagonally, and that's just how the polygons are made, so I just delete the faces. It ends up looking fine in post, and then you'll also see there are some faces we can't remove, and then we'll be erasing those lines in Photoshop. I'm just gonna cut until I have it set up how I want. For the save settings and the output, go to render settings and save. You can name it whatever you want. Change it to PNG and make sure you check the alpha channel so that it is transparent when we bring it into Photoshop. Now you go to the little drop down for the output and you can make it whatever size, but I recommend square 2K. And then you can render it and you're ready to go. And bring it into Photoshop. Now, once we have the gun in Photoshop, our render, we want to add a black background to it, and then drag it below the gun layer. And then I use Control J to duplicate the layer a few times to fill out the lines more. And then I merge them all together. I make a masking layer, and then I take a black brush and I paint, while on the masking layer, I paint over the lines that I want to get rid of. And I use a masking layer so that I can use a white brush and undo all of the changes that I made if I think that it doesn't look good when I zoom out or something. And the lines that you erase, it all just depends. It's really just preference for which lines you want to see. I wanted there to be, it's clear that you could see like through the object, but I didn't want a lot of the polygon lines and stuff like I mentioned earlier. So I end up clearing quite a bit of lines actually, and I do make a mistake on the stock, or towards the back of the gun actually, not the stock. But in the file in the description, I fixed it so that it looks normal. I'm gonna speed this up and you guys will see the tedious process it is. But it's well worth it. I'm changing the brush size on the fly using open bracket and close bracket keys. I'm zooming in and out using control and the scroll wheel, and I'm panning around using the spacebar and click and drag. Once I have the lines how I like them, I duplicate the layer, and then I hide the original so I can do non-destructive work. And I add hue and saturation, I check colorize, and I decide that I want to make this one green, actually, you'll see. Just to make it different than the one I already made. And the darkness and lightness, because of the colorize, it really changes how much you want the original white to blend with it. And so you can set it, you can make it darker and it will be all green, but I wanted a little bit of the white highlights in there, so I only have it a little dark, and this is the color we end up with. You'll see I actually decided to change a few things again with the outlines and stuff. Now I reposition it into the way I want it. I think having it rotated makes it look a lot better. I also think that the suppressor is a little too large, so what I'll do is I'll end up resetting the position so that I can select it as sideways, and I will just move that part over to where it overlaps, so it ends up making the suppressor actually shorter. We're gonna reorientate it the way we want. Now we're gonna work on the glow. So I duplicate the layer, I go to filters, and I add Gaussian blur. Looking at them after the blur, it seems like there was a bit of it added a yellowish tint. I am colorblind, so that's just how it looked to me. But so I end up making a color overlay and fixing that by just throwing in more green. I copy the layer style and put it onto the other one as well. Now I want to add a glow to these edges, and since there's not a lot happening around them, I end up taking a paintbrush on a new layer that's the same color as the object, and I just go around painting the little parts that I want to have the blur, or to have the glow, because we're gonna also Gaussian blur these, or this layer, and then it'll end up giving a nice glow to it all. Now I'm choosing the text. I end up going with it's actually an Outrun font, laser, like Laser 84 or something. And you can really use any font you want, but I recommend looking up like bold or retro or vaporwave fonts and stuff. It just gives it a better look. Now I apply this layer style to it, and I'll go through and I change the colors to green. This is the layer style I have on my original image. Now we can move on to adding the grid. So I have a grid image here that I'll throw in. Once it's in, we resize it up, and I move it to where it's slightly below the middle, slightly below where the horizon would be. I decide that I'll go for a purple look on this one. Purple and green. It's like very opposite, very polar opposites, and so they contrast well. And then when you end up adding the Vaporwave stuff and filters and grain and stuff on it, they go really good together. I don't really like the text being transparent, but I'm too lazy to fix that within the layer style, so I just end up taking a black brush and I end up painting over it on a new layer, but under the text. Now I'm gonna take a big brush with a that is a 0% hardness, and I'm just gonna go over the back of the grid so that it fades out as it gets farther back. This can be uniform, or how I like to do it is I like to make it fade a little more in the center. It just gives it a bit more depth. I do the same thing for the glow. I duplicate the layer and then add a Gaussian blur to it. And I end up duplicating this Gaussian blur layer again so that it gives it more of a glow. And then I merge those layers together. Now we're gonna add the post-processing, such as the dust and scratches and some noise. So we take this dust texture and I put it on hard light with a very low fill. Turn the fill way down so you can really only see the scratches. Then we're gonna make a new layer. You can press Shift Backspace, or you can go to Layer, New Fill Layer, and you want to fill it with 50% gray. Press OK, and you go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and make sure you check monochromatic. The distribution is up to you, and so is the amount. Now, like the one before, well, actually no, for this one we turned the opacity down, and that's really it. If you made it to the end, thank you so much. I hope this helped. I hope I taught you some stuff. Let me know if you want a tutorial on how I made something like this as well. Let me know in the comments, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you.